Hey, welcome back. Today is day 24 of my 365-day challenge for 1 million subscribers. Today I want to talk with you about a spiritual topic. As you know, over the last few days, we're discussing will and willpower, and then we started getting into some ancient text from sermons by Meister Eckhart. He's a theologian, philosopher, and spiritual seeker from early 1300s. His writing interested me, and I was looking at his Sermon 10. And I'm going to read a few passages out to you and see how it hits us, if there's any reaction or reflection from that. I've done a lot of thinking today about some spiritual topics, and I think they deserve its acceptance and surrender, deserves its own video. The question I posed to myself is, there are millions upon millions of atheists today. I don't even know if it's half the world. But if somebody doesn't believe in a higher power or God, how can they surrender? They cannot surrender. I think this whole business of spirituality has got some shortcomings. They're trying to utilize words that have been used in the religion, but it doesn't lend itself well. For example, surrender. If you don't know who you're surrendering to, or let's say you're denying that somebody's even there, it's impossible to surrender. You can't surrender to nobody. So this practice of surrender is profound. It's so powerful, and you could feel it very deeply. So they're missing out on that. And I don't think they should be using that word surrender. You could just use whatever language they want. But certainly that word surrender can't be appropriated completely. Anyways, let's get back to the topic of today's video, which is Meister Eckhart's Sermon 10. And let me just start reading from you. I just picked just a few passages. He says, if God wills you to be sick and you want to be well, if God wills that your friend should die and you want him to live contrary to God's will, then God is not your Lord. If you love God and are sick in God's name, if your friend dies in God's name, if he loses an eye in God's name, with such a man it would indeed be well. But if you are sick and pray to God for health, then health is dearer to you than God, and he is not your God. He is the God of heaven and earth, but not your God. That right there is alluding to or referring to acceptance. If you accept things as they are, if you accept what is, then you would not be praying for it to be different. Because he says, if you are sick and pray to God for health, then health is dearer to you than God, and he is not your God. So if you are praying for anything to be different, then you are signaling your non-acceptance of things as they are. I don't know if I should say this right now because I think we're going to get into it. You can wish for things to be different, but praying is totally is a contrast or contradictory to that, or it stands apart from it. Praying and wishing, two different things. So in this passage, he says, if you are sick and pray to God for health, then health is dearer to you than God, and he is not your God. It's a really amazing point that he makes. He's talking about acceptance. If you accept, you would not pray for it to be different. He continues a little further down. Just see what a righteous man can do with God. Just see what a righteous man can do with God. It is a certain and necessary truth that he who resigns his will wholly to God will catch God and bind God, so that God can do nothing but what that man wills. Amazing. Look what I think he'll explain what I was going to explain to you. He who makes his will over wholly to God, to him God gives his will in return. So wholly and so genuinely that God's will becomes that man's own, and he has sworn by himself to do nothing but what that man wills. For God will never be anyone's own who has not first become his own. Do you see what's happening here? So I had to really think about this. I mean, you can catch it. But so the key word here is holy. W-H-O-L-L-Y. Holy. Completely. That's the key word you have to pay attention to. So it says, see what a righteous man can do with God. I'm going over it again for you. So he who resigns his will wholly over to God will catch God and bind God, so that God can do nothing but what that man wills. Such an interesting way to think about that. So it's like you're giving your will wholly over to God. And then he's saying, Meister Eckhart, you will catch God and bind God so that God can do nothing but what you will, or but what that man wills. But you've given your will over wholly to him, but then he's saying that God can do no different than what you will. It's like a circular reference or relation here, but it's a powerful one from the human standpoint. It's like God can do no different than what you will, but you're giving your will over to him wholly, completely. But then you say he can do no different than what you will. I don't know what made him think about that, or think about it that way. It's certainly wow. It's I don't know. It's something. Just really considering yourself in the equation there, like standing firmly in his seat and thinking about his involvement in it. So interesting. The last passage here that I wanted to share with you. He says, we deafen God day and night with our cries. Lord, thy will be done. And when God's will is done, we are angry, which is wrong. If our will is God's will, that is good. But if God's will is our will, that is far better. If your will is God's will, then if you are sick, you will not desire against God's will to be better, though you would wish it were God's will that you were better. You would wish it were God's will that you were better. You can wish, but you would not desire or pray. Look at the difference here. When you are praying, you're making a request. You're communicating a request. But when you're wishing, it's undirected hope. It's more of a personal hope or desire for something to happen without directing it to a being or force. So you're wishing by and with yourself, but praying is putting in a request. So it's okay to wish. It's okay to have a desire, like with yourself, but not to pray for God for something to be different. Because we're saying that our will is God's will. Whatever God wills, that's what our will is, right? So somebody could be saying that. So let me pick up from that last sentence. If your will is God's will, then if you are sick, you will not desire against God's will to be better, though you would wish it were God's will that you were better. So if somebody's sick, they can say, I wish it was God's will that I wasn't sick. I mean, you don't have to say that exactly, but just the understanding of it. And I'm using one out of a million examples, right? A lot of bad things happen all the time. So we just have to accept it as God's will. Because it happened. It was meant to be. It's God's will. And in this passage, he's referring to or talking about, well, we see something happened. We will for the same thing because we don't wish for it to be any different because it's God's will. And we submit or we resign our will wholly, W-H-O-L-L-Y, wholly and completely to God. So that God, our will is God's will, and when it's wholly, completely, God's will becomes our will. So continuing, almost done with this passage, guys, stay with me here. So, and when things went wrong with you, you would wish it were God's will that they should go all right. So if things go wrong, you can wish that it's God's will that they would go right or be different. But not pray that they would be different and not have a desire that you're communicating over to God, as if that would signal non-acceptance, right? You're refusing to accept. It shouldn't happen. You say, if something happened, a bad car accident, you lose somebody, you lose a lot of money, you don't get what you wanted. So non-acceptance would be like denying it, refusing to accept it, fighting with the world and in your communication with your Creator, with God. So accepting it is just being okay with it. Hey, it happened. I have to accept it 100%. So we continue, repeat this, and when things went wrong with you, you would wish it were God's will that they should go all right. So you can wish, you can desire, but don't ask God, don't make a prayer, a request. You can wish. You can wish. So I want you to understand the difference there. But when God's will is your will, then if you are sick in God's name, if your friend dies in God's name, it is a certain and necessary truth that though it should entail all the pains of hell, of purgatory, and the world, the will in union with God would bear all this eternally, forever in hellish torment, and take it for its eternal bliss. Very interesting passage. That's all I wanted to share with you from Sermon 10. And it's definitely about acceptance. That's what got me thinking about its counterpart, surrender. The concept of surrendering is very powerful. Accepting and surrendering is very powerful. You hear this in spiritual discussions and videos all the time about accepting, but you won't hear it in this. It's been watered down, it's diluted, and it's not strong enough because there's no object. They've denied God. They've removed God from the equation. Right? It's all about the self. It's relationship with self and individuality. And so they're just accepting things, but they can't surrender to anybody. And so they try to play with words. I am not criticizing, I'm not pointing fun. I've experienced so many things in my life, and I've been on all sides of the fence. But I think as a spiritual practice, they cannot use the word surrender. It doesn't make any sense. They can practice acceptance. It doesn't need an object. It doesn't need, they don't have to direct it at someone, but surrender does. So in any case, that was Sermon 10 from Meister Eckhart. You can find his content, books, references online. It's from the 1300s. Very interesting. I encourage you to read it. And so I'm going to look forward to your comments. And I'd like to hear what your thoughts are and what your experiences have been with this. And please like and subscribe. And if you think anyone could find this video useful, please share it with them. Thank you. Oh, come on.